possible. If we raise birds without the artificials, hormones, and antibiotics, we must necessarily expect tremendous disease problems as well as dramatic performance loss when they remain too long in the brooder house. The only way these birds can perform well without negative inputs is to get them out on the positive pasture. To minimize stress, move the birds early in the day. This is both the benefit of moving them when it is cool and of allowing them to have at least half a day in new surroundings before nightfall. It is hard for us to appreciate just how stressful this move is on the birds. It is far more stressful than a similar move when the birds are 6 or 7 weeks old. Not only are the birds being moved to a new area, they are going from inside a house to outside in the pasture. It really does shake up their world. For that reason, we want it to go as smoothly and comfortably as possible. Obviously, you want to be aware of the weather report. You don't want to move the chicks out on a rainy day or a cold, blustery day. If the weather is going to be nice for a couple of days, we try to get the birds out early. Or maybe we will move out half of them to try to minimize the risk. Moving out half at least gets them out and certainly takes pressure off those who remain. You can push it or wait until the final hour, depending on what the weather is doing. If a couple of good days are expected, I encourage you to go ahead and get the birds out. Within just a couple of days, they acclimate well and take right off in the pasture. If the weather is good, the move seems to just stimulate them to grow faster. Once they are acclimated, even if it's just for a couple of days, they can take some rough weather. The critical thing is not to throw them into rough weather in the first 24 hours. When you go in to catch the chicks, remove as many obstacles as possible. Take out the waterers, feeders, and get the lights and hover out of the way. Otherwise, you'll be tripping and falling or breaking things, and that gets both you and the birds all worked up. We use a couple of plywood pieces about 4 feet long and 2 feet high as partitions to crowd the birds into a corner. Don't try to get all the birds at once. Just ease some into a corner, pen them in with your handheld partitions, and then fill a crate. Even though you could put more than 50 in a crate, especially if they are only 14 days old, do not. Give them plenty of room. If you put in 75 or 100, they will pile up and smother. It doesn't matter if it's cool or warm. When they get excited, they will pile up. It's especially critical not to overload the crates when it's warm. Be patient catching the chicks. Take 2 or 3 bites if necessary. You don't want to force more than 100 or so into a corner or they will pile up and suffocate. I can't stress enough the propensity of these little birds to pile up and suffocate. As they pile up in the corner where you are catching them, keep raking the top ones down to expose the lower ones to some air. They really do panic, and you must be aggressive about giving them air. Do not be abusive when picking up these chicks, but you need not treat them too gingerly either. I catch them by one leg, putting 7 or 8 in one hand and a couple in the other hand, so I pick them up 10 at a time. That makes counting easy. I slip the legs between my fingers to hold more. Be sure to pick the birds up randomly and so you do not end up with a pen of cockerels and a pen of pullets. After loading the crates, you will put them in a trailer or pick up to go to the field. The birds will spread out in the crate and calm down. Many of them will even go to sleep, sticking their heads clear through the slats of the crates. Be sure not to crush heads when you are loading crates. It happens real easy, I know. Drive carefully out to the field so the birds are not shaking around. The more you shake them, the more they will pile up in fright. Just take your time. It really is worth it. Have the pen situated where it is going to be before you put the chicks. You want to give them at least 24 hours before they go through the trauma of their first pen move. Take the chicks out of the crates as fast as possible so you can shut the lid and leave them alone. If the move goes smoothly, within 20 minutes the birds will be up and exploring their new surroundings. Make sure they can reach the water and feed before leaving. That first evening, make sure they are sleeping under a roof. Check to make sure none has found a hole and gotten out. If all is well, enjoy your night's rest. Chapter 12. Pasture Logistics. The pens should be arranged in a wing formation with the lead pen on the downhill side so that in case of surface water runoff, the water running through one pen will not enter the adjacent pen. Another reason for the staggered arrangement is to enable the trailing pen to run immediately adjacent to the preceding pen's paddock. If the pens run side by side, alleyways for access must be left. This takes up space and leaves a streaked appearance in the field when the grass greens up behind the pens. It just isn't as pretty or efficient. We take water out in large trailer-mounted water tanks with large valves so that we can gravity fill 5-gallon buckets to carry water to the pens. These buckets may be any color. The pen buckets must be white. Black ones absorb solar energy and warm the water, reducing consumption. Yellow and blue buckets attract insects which die, fall to the bottom, and then clog the small hose, couplings, and water assembly. Without 5-gallon buckets, our operation would fall apart. The world revolves around 5-gallon buckets. Feed is stored in large used fuel tanks. Underground fuel tanks can be had for the asking. I cut them up with an acetylene torch so they are no more than about 4 feet at the rim. If you are afraid of an explosion, fill the tanks with water to displace any fumes that may be present. Clean them out with a wire brush and let rain into them for a month if possible. Marlin Buckholder in Singers Glen, Virginia picked up several poultry shipping boxes from a large poultry processor. When the outer wall gets damaged, the company throws them away. These light double-walled plastic boxes hold about a ton of feed, and he moves them around with forks on his front end loader. When they are empty, they are light enough to move around by hand. The feed containers must be portable to move up and down the field with the pens. A gallon of feed weighs about 7 pounds, so you can compute how much feed a tank will hold by knowing the volume. A simple top made of roofing on a wooden frame that fits within the tank's circular rim makes a fine flat roof. Normally enough slant in the field can be obtained for it to shed water nicely. This roof is light enough to be shoved aside or even lifted down and set aside while you scoop out feed with a shovel and put in 5-gallon buckets for transport to the pens. I usually stand on a 5-gallon bucket to get some height advantage over the feed tank. A large galvanized feed scoop works well to dip the feed out of the 5-gallon bucket into the trough feeders at the pens. The bulk feed truck from the feed mill drives right out through the field and augers feed into our tanks in just a few minutes. When the tanks are empty, I simply flip them on their round sides and roll them down the field to where they will be close to the pens. If the ground is too soggy for the truck to get in when we need feed, we can put the tanks on a hay wagon and fill them from a solid road or lane, and then pull them out to the field with the tractor. The pens should be moved one after another without feed and water being added. The fresh feed and water distract the chickens from their pasture. Delaying the feed and water a few minutes encourages the birds to eat more forage. After moving all the pens, I go back and fill all the waterers. That way I can glance at them for any malfunctions during the return trip. When I fill all the feed troughs and replace them in the pens, Diane Kaufman in Wisconsin uses 6-inch PVC pipe, cuts out 1/3 in the top, and hangs that in the pen for feeders. The dolly we use to move the pens was invented by my engineer brother, Art. It is essentially a portable axle designed to function also as a lever, with the wheels being the fulcrum. The 8-inch lawnmower wheels are not as prone to getting stuck in holes as small 6-inch wheels. Made of 1/2-inch pipe, it is light but strong enough to do the job. It allows me to move each pen by myself in less than 30 seconds. About 4 feet square, it is wide enough to give good pen stability but narrow enough so that the axle, which rides only a couple of inches above the ground, will not bind up on grass clumps. A refinement I put on the second generation was a bent axle, so that the pen rides the same distance off the ground, about 2 to 3 inches, but the middle of the axle is about 6 inches high. This allows it to clear the grass better and aids in going over rough ground. With the handle held vertically, put the prongs into the bottom board of the pen. Grasping the pen handle, step into the dolly so you are straddling it. Body position is important to make the whole movement easy. Pushing back and down on the dolly handle and picking up on the pen handle, slip the dolly under the pen and let the bottom board fit into the stop slot. Go around to the other end of the pen and pull on the handle. The pen just rolls along. I usually ask one of the children to go out with me and help shoo the birds away from the trailing edge in the first week. It speeds up the process when the birds are tiny. Diane Kaufman used a pair of roller skates to move her pens. She took off the shoe and fastened on a 2x4 board, notched in the middle to keep the bottom board from slipping off. She slips one skate under one corner and the other under the other corner and claims it works great. She has 7 pens and moves them all by herself. The daily maintenance per pen takes about 5 minutes, with feed and water tanks no more than a few yards from the pens. Servicing is as easy as it is in a regular loose house chicken house. Moving the pens takes very little time. I can move and service 26 pens in 90 minutes. That's 2,400 birds. And the daily moves reduce feed consumption by 30% and produce a healthy low-fat bird. The benefits far outweigh the labor involved in carrying feed and water and moving the pens. With daily moves and loaded with about 80 or 90 birds, each pen spot is putting down the equivalent of 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre. If we drop below 50 birds per pen, performance drops because the birds do too much running around. We are somewhat locked into the number per pen in order to maintain peak performance. But 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre is a healthy dose in anybody's book. In fact, many agronomists would say it is too much, but that is why we want the birds to be on a fast-growing vegetative forage. We want the forage to be able to assimilate and metabolize this shot of nitrogen. In a continuously grazed pasture, the forage becomes weak and can't respond when given a big meal. If you are working hard, are in good physical condition, and burning off many calories, a big meal feels good. But if all you've done is laze around the house and shuffle some papers, a big dinner does not sit well. Grass that is in good condition, that has been kept at what we call energy equilibrium through intensive controlled grazing, can utilize far more nutrients than weakened grass. This whole model involves many parts of a puzzle for a maximum payback. The more pieces you throw away as unimportant, the poorer the payback. Healthy vegetative grass can metabolize twice the nitrogen that continuously grazed, weakened grass can. Agronomists who say 300 pounds is toxic are not using properly managed grass in their study. After the initial flush of growth, we come in behind the pens with the cattle and graze off the grass when it is only about 6 or 8 inches. I call this candy bar green grass. We run our portable electric fence at right angles to it so that the cows in any paddock have some of the candy bar grass and some regular forage. If all they get is candy bar grass, their manure is too washy. One thing is for sure, cattle like that candy bar green grass. When cows on other farms are going through fescue toxicity problems, ours eat this fescue like candy. There is clearly no repugnance to the chicken manure. The cows take the grass right to the ground. As usual, I move the cows in 24 hours to their paddock and let the just grazed grass regrow. If soil moisture is good, this grass will often regrow nearly an inch per day. But this grazing pressure stimulates the grass to grow more than it would if we waited until it grew to 12 inches or more before grazing. If we left the cows on longer so that they kept nipping off the new shoots, the grass would be stunted and could not express through plant volume the benefits of the chicken manure application. By shutting off the expression through lack of a rest period, then we would lose many of the nutrients through vaporization or leaching. The idea is to keep the grass in its blaze of growth cycle that Andrew Wasson explains in his classic Grass Productivity to fully utilize the nitrogen the chickens have put on the soil. It typically takes 3 grazings or 3 shearings to return the grass to normal green color. The intensive controlled grazing allows us to get the full benefit of the nitrogen and also to fully harvest it rather than letting it leach or vaporize away. How we place the pens and what we do, both in front and behind the pens, play a critical role in healthy birds, a healthy environment, and a healthy payback. Chapter 13. What kind of pasture? Pasture consumption varies according to freshness, type, and length of the forage. Certainly any forage is better than none, but ideally it should be the most palatable and the most resilient that can be offered. Length is crucial for a number of reasons. Chickens like the forage to be somewhere between 1 and 3 inches. I've seen birds eat a 6-inch blade of grass, but that certainly is an exception, not the norm. They prefer those tiny, tender shoots about 2 inches long, both for palatability and harvesting ease. This height can be obtained by mowing ahead of the moving pens or by grazing. Mowing leaves a stubble that seems to hurt the chickens' feet. They much prefer the sward condition after it just has been grazed by livestock. This grazing can immediately precede the chickens. No rest period is required because the residual stand contains plenty of forage to feed the chickens. The shorter the grass, the easier it is to move the pens. The trailing edge runs only about 2 inches above the soil level. If it ran higher, the chickens, especially when they are small, would slip out underneath it. When the sod is clumpy and or tall, the bottom board snags and binds. The chickens move much better too. When the grass is short, if it is tall and thick, they tend to get stuck against the pen's trailing edge as the grass bends over and traps them in a narrowing wedge. The more difficult it is for the birds to run ahead onto the new pasture, the slower the pen must be moved to not run over them. The hanging waterer, too, may malfunction if it touches a thick clump of grass. Some of the new models have a special independent suspension that allows them to touch the ground and still work, but many, especially older models, do not shut off if the base touches the ground. The float valve stays open if the water touches the ground. Water constantly running is as bad as water that won't run. If the valve won't shut off, the bucket reservoir soon runs dry and the birds are out of water until the bucket is refilled. Tall grass too tends to reduce airflow around the pen, causing it to heat up inside on a warm day. It also makes large gaps between the pen's bottom board and the ground. This not only may allow the birds to escape, but also invites predator problems. These gaps caused by soil depressions can be easily spotted and plugged when the sward is short. They are hard to see when the grass is long. Many predators tend to shy away from short grass. A great horned owl will pluck a weasel or a mink right up off the ground at night. As a result, these predators like to walk along the edges of woods or through tall grass, which contains the greatest number of field mice and voles anyway. Mice and voles are generally the predator's preference. Pasture length finally has a direct bearing on bird cleanliness. When the sward is short, the bird's excrement goes right onto the soil surface, where the birds scratch it in and the moisture is absorbed into the ground. Tall grass, however, bends over and forms a barrier between the chickens and the soil. Furthermore, this vegetative mat is slick, high in moisture, and similar to slick magazine paper in absorbency compared to Bounty paper towels. In just an hour or so, the slick mat of grass becomes soiled, and the birds slip and slide around on this until they are moved. For hygiene, it is imperative to keep the sod short. The pasture species should be as diverse as possible. Just like livestock, chickens will